The river looked like it wanted to eat my truck. Water was already sliding across the bridge deck, a dirty brown sheet that hissed under my headlights. I eased forward until it licked at my tires, watched it rise another inch, and knew if I tried to cross, the current would take me. Behind me, a massive oak lay across the county road, branches whipping in the wind like angry arms. I was trapped in the valley. Rain pounded the windshield so hard the wipers lost the fight. My fists tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't just a storm. It felt personal. If I didn't get back up to the Russo cabin, the tarp over the unfinished roof would rip. Rain would pour into the brand new interior, and $5,000 of damage would land on my license. One more black mark, and the state would pull it for good. I swore under my breath, slammed the truck into reverse, and spun around on the gravel. There was nowhere else to go. No other shelter that would stand up to 60-mile-an-hour winds. Just the job site I had left an hour ago, thinking I was done for the day. Thinking I was done with her for the day. Elena Russo. She was the kind of woman who walked through a half-built house like a CEO doing an inspection. Dark hair pinned up, sharp blazer, pen always ready to circle a missed nail or crooked line of grout. She'd fired 3 contractors before me. I needed her check, but I didn't need to be stuck in a power outage with the only client who could make me feel 16 and stupid just by raising one eyebrow. I drove back up the mountain, tires slipping on the soaked switchbacks, headlights cutting a weak tunnel through the rain. Trees bent in the wind like they were trying to rip themselves out of the ground. My stomach twisted, not from the road, from the thought of Elena alone in that glass and timber box, while the sky tried to tear the roof off. I parked my truck close to the porch to block some of the wind and ran for the door. The rain hit me sideways, cold enough to hurt. The heavy oak door flew open before I could touch the handle. She stood there, framed by the warm yellow glow of a battery lantern behind her. For once, she wasn't in a blazer. She wore a black tank top and soft leggings, barefoot on the new hardwood. Her dark hair fell loose over her shoulders, damp around the edges, and she held a stack of folded linens against her chest like a shield. Her brown eyes didn't go to my muddy boots. They went past me, to the dark trees behind my shoulder. Her fingers crushed the sheets until her knuckles turned white. "Kale," she breathed, "I thought you left." Quote, "Bridge is flooded," I shouted over a crack of thunder as I shoulder-checked the door shut. The storm sound dropped to a muffled roar. The air inside smelled like pine, drywall dust, and her vanilla perfume. "We're stuck. Power lines are down for miles." "The power isn't the problem," she whispered. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the back of the cabin. I set the sheets down on a bench. "Then what is?" Quote, "Come here," she said. I followed her to the utility closet off the kitchen. The big standby generator sat silent. The fuel line at the side didn't sag. It hung loose. I crouched and lifted it. It hadn't been torn by wind or pulled out by a branch. It had been cut. Clean. Diagonal. By a serrated blade. A chill ran up my spine that had nothing to do with the cold water still dripping from my hair. "You sure the power went out with the storm?" I asked. "I tried the landline," she said, arms crossing over her chest. "Dead. Cell service dropped right after. I went to check the generator and found it like that." "Do you have enemies, Elena?" She swallowed, jaw tightening. "I have fans," she corrected. "Obsessive ones. I came up here to finish the manuscript in peace. I didn't think he'd find me." "He." The word sat heavy between us. "Did he threaten you?" I asked. She looked me in the eye. "He writes letters," she said. "Long ones. He says the book is for him. He says if I don't finish it his way, he'll finish me instead." I stood slowly, wiping my hands on my jeans. The cabin around us suddenly felt smaller. Glass windows, wood walls, trees pressing close on all sides. I glanced up and caught a faint brown crescent on the tongue-and-groove ceiling near the stone chimney. A stain that hadn't been there yesterday. Roof flashing. Hairline gap. Small now. A storm like this would make it grow. 2 problems. 1 storm. "Okay," I said, my voice dropping into the calm place I used when things got bad. "We secure the cabin. Ground floor is exposed. Too many windows. We go upstairs." She nodded once and led the way to the loft level. The master suite sat at the end of a short hall, the only room with a solid door and a deadbolt. I stepped in behind her and felt the air change. The room was big, a stone fireplace, a wall of glass looking out over black trees and white streaks of rain. A single massive king-size bed sat in the middle, piled with pillows and a thick gray duvet. Elena stopped halfway into the room. I almost bumped into her. She turned, still holding the linens against her like armor. Her voice tried to find its usual steel, but it came out softer at the edges. "This is my room," she said. "And there's only one bed." I looked at the bed, then at her, at the fear pulsing in her throat under her skin. She was waiting for me to make a joke, to take advantage, to prove I was like the men she wrote about. "Then I'll take the floor if you want," I said simply. "I'm not here to sleep, Elena. I'm here to make sure that door stays closed." She blinked. The answer clearly wasn't the one she expected. "The floor is hardwood," she said. "It's freezing." "I've slept on concrete," I said. "This is luxury." I checked the window latches, tugged on the frames I had hung myself. Solid. I slid the deadbolt on the bedroom door, then dragged the thick faux fur rug from beside the bed and spread it in front of the door. I sat with my back against the wood, hammer laid across my lap, facing the room. "Do you have a gun?" I asked. "No," she said. "I write about murder. I don't participate in it. There's a kitchen knife downstairs." "I've got a hammer," I said. "It'll do." She watched me for a long second, the lantern light catching the shine in her eyes. "You don't have to act like a bodyguard," she murmured. "You're my contractor." "Tonight I'm whatever keeps you breathing," I replied. The storm shook the cabin. Wind howled around the eaves. Somewhere outside, a tree branch cracked like a rifle shot. Elena lay down on the far side of the bed on top of the comforter, facing the wall. I stayed on the floor, every muscle tight, listening to the house talk. At around 2 in the morning, a sharp thump hit the roof. The sound rolled down the chimney like a fist. Elena bolted upright. "He's trying to get in." "It's a branch," I said quietly, not moving from my post. "I nailed the ladder to the deck. There's no way up without me hearing it." "You don't know him," she whispered into the dark. "He sent me letters. He says he's watching. He says I belong to him." My back ached. The floor was stealing the heat from my spine. My eyes burned from staring at shadows for hours. "Why did you stay?" she asked, suddenly. "You could have turned around, risked the hike out." "And leave you alone up here with a guy who cuts generators and writes death threats?" I snorted softly. "My mother raised me better than that." She went quiet. The storm kept growling around us. Rain hammered the roof like fingers drumming on a door. A few minutes later, I heard the rustle of covers. The bed creaked. Soft footsteps crossed the floor. "Kale," she said, closer now. I opened my eyes. She stood at the edge of the rug, a dark shape against the faint window light. Her hair was messy around her shoulders. She was still clutching one of the pillows to her chest like a shield. "The floor is ridiculous," she said, her tone trying to be bossy and almost making it. "It's a king bed. It's 6 feet wide. Get up." "I'm dirty," I said. "I've been hauling lumber all day." "Take a shower," she said. "There's still hot water in the tank." "I can't sleep with you guarding the door like a soldier. It makes me feel like a prisoner. Please." The word landed harder than the thunder. The woman who always gave orders had just asked. I stood, bones protesting, and grabbed a clean t-shirt and sleep shorts from my bag. I showered in the dark to save the lantern battery, scrubbing off mud and sawdust. The hot water loosened the knot in my back, but not in my chest. When I came out, the room smelled like soap and rain, and the faint sweetness of her perfume. She was lying on the far left side of the bed now, under the covers, facing the wall. She had left a wide strip of mattress open beside her, a demilitarized zone between us. I walked around, lifted the edge of the duvet, and slid in. The mattress dipped under my weight. I stayed on my side, stiff as a board, hands folded over my stomach, leaving more than 2 feet of space between us. "Good night, Kale," she murmured into the dark. "Night, Elena," I answered. A few minutes later, a crack of thunder hit so hard the whole cabin shuddered. She flinched, breath catching. My body moved before my brain did. I reached across the invisible line and laid my hand over hers on the mattress. Her skin was cold. For a heartbeat, I expected her to pull away. Instead, she turned her hand over and laced her fingers through mine. Tight, like I was the only solid thing left in a world made of water and noise and fear. I lay there in the dark, listening to the storm, her small, shaky breaths, and the hammering of my own heart. Outside, the mountain raged. Inside, her hand in mine said something simple and terrifying. We were not alone in this anymore. By morning, my arm was numb and my heart was a mess. I woke up to the weight of someone breathing against my chest. For a second, I could not remember why my back did not hurt and why I could smell vanilla instead of motor oil. Then I looked down. Elena was tucked under my arm like she had always been there. Her face was relaxed and soft, pressed against my t-shirt. One of her knees rested against my hip. Our hands were still tangled, my fingers wrapped around hers on top of the sheet. My whole body went still. If I moved, I would wake her. If I stayed, my heart might explode. Her lashes fluttered. She inhaled, probably catching a long breath of sweat, soap, and sawdust off my chest. Then she stiffened. She pulled away, fast, like she was yanking herself out of a dream. Her feet hit the floor. She grabbed the blazer hanging over the chair and shoved her arms into it like armor. 2 quick twists pulled her hair into a knot at the back of her head. Her chin lifted. Her eyes were dry. The woman who hired me was back. "The storm is worse," she said, looking toward the big window instead of at me. Gray light leaked around the edges of the glass. The trees outside whipped in hard, sideways rain. "I'll go check the perimeter," I said, swinging out of bed and hunting for my jeans. She didn't answer. She watched me move around the room with that tight, controlled look she used on crooked tiles and slow suppliers. But under it, I still saw the way her hand had clung to mine all night. Downstairs, the air felt colder. The fire had gone down to red coals. I checked the front door, the windows, the latches, all closed, all locked. When I stepped onto the back porch, the storm slapped me in the face. The deck boards were wet but not flooded. The glass of the sliding door fogged where warm air met cold. Someone had drawn a smiley face in the condensation. On the outside, the round head, 2 dots, and a curved mouth looked simple and stupid. My stomach dropped anyway. I slid the door open a few inches and stepped out. The wind shoved rain under the eaves. The boards were wet but dry enough to show what the storm could not erase. Muddy boot prints. A pattern of tread marks leading along the edge of the porch and disappearing near the corner where the cabin sat up on piers. I followed them with my eyes and saw the crawl space opening. One of the foundation vent screens had been bent inward. Not from an animal, from fingers. I crouched, water soaking the knees of my jeans, and saw it. A strip of paper nailed to one of the posts with one of my own bright roofing nails. Not a letter in crazy handwriting. A printed page, ripped from a draft. I pulled it free and held it under the gray light. My own name stared back at me from the middle of the paragraph. Not my real name. The name of the character she had told me about. The hero. The carpenter. One paragraph was circled hard in red ink. Beside it, in neat block letters, someone had written, "Don't change the ending." My throat went tight. He was not just a voice in a letter. He was close enough to steal pages, close enough to know the story, close enough to crawl under the house and listen to us walk above his head. I folded the page and shoved it deep into my pocket. If Elena saw it right now, she might break. Or worse, she might pick a fight with him in her head and try something reckless. I did what I always did when things turned bad. I carried it myself for 1 more minute. I finished the walk around the cabin, staying under the overhang, checking every board I had nailed yesterday. Everything was still in place. The only weak spot was that bent vent screen. I straightened it as best I could from the outside and made a note in my head to block the inside with something heavy. By the time I came back in, my hands were shaking from cold and anger. I forced my shoulders loose before I stepped into the kitchen. Elena sat at the island in leggings and an oversized sweater, bare feet on the rung of the stool. Her laptop was open. The screen glowed against her tired face. She looked more like a woman than a client, more human than the cool figure who circled tile joints with a pen. "I need to work," she said, like a dare. "Battery is at 40%. I have to finish this chapter." "Priorities," I muttered, pulling a small propane stove from my toolbox and setting it on the counter. "Coffee first." I filled a pot from the tap and set it over the flame. The hiss and pop of heating metal felt almost normal. "You're angry," she said, watching me. "I'm alert," I answered. "There's a difference." She slid off the stool and walked to the glass door, her hand pressed to the cold pane. Her skin left a faint print next to the smiley face he had drawn. Her fingers paused. She turned, eyes suddenly sharp. "What did you see on the porch?" I cursed myself. Of course she had noticed the way I moved. The extra edge in my voice. She made a living off details. She saw everything. I pulled the folded page from my pocket and laid it on the island. "This," I said, "and boot prints heading under the deck." Quote. She picked up the paper. "Read the circled paragraph. Read the red ink." I watched the color wash out of her face like the tide running off sand. "He has my drafts," she said quietly. "He's either inside my cloud account or he's close enough to steal pages off my printer." "Either way," I replied, "he's close." Her hands shook once. Then I saw something change in her eyes. The fear went hard. Cold. Sharp. She slid the laptop away and opened a drawer. I watched her reach in, expecting a knife. She pulled out a Sharpie and a notepad. "He wants me to finish the book his way," she said, uncapping the marker. "Fine. He can wait." She started writing a list in fast, clean strokes. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Go bag," she said. "Clothes, water, food, lantern batteries. Things we grab if we have to run. Battery stays at 40 for emergencies only. No more writing until daylight and distance." I stared at her for a second, surprised. "That's the smartest thing you've said since I got here," I admitted. She shot me a look that would have made most men fold. "Don't get cocky, Carpenter. I know how this story goes. The brave woman plays cat and mouse and ends up dead in chapter 20. "Then we are not playing," I said. "You work. I fortify." For the next 4 hours, the steady pounding of my hammer became the heartbeat of the house. I pulled spare plywood from the work shed and screwed it over the ground floor windows, leaving narrow sight gaps high enough that someone would need a ladder to look in. Every time I stepped past the island, I saw her, hunched over her notebook, scribbling notes and crossing them out. I noticed things about her without meaning to. She chewed her lower lip when she got stuck on a sentence. She rubbed her left wrist absently, like it had been hurt a long time ago. She drank her coffee too slow and ignored it when it went cold, so I started reheating it. I would walk by, take the mug without asking, dump the cold coffee, pour a fresh hot one from the pot, and set it back by her elbow. I did it once, twice, 3 times. The 3rd time, she stopped writing. She looked at the steaming mug. Then up at me. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't mention it," I replied, grabbing another sheet of plywood. She watched me as I climbed the ladder and drilled into the studs, arms steady, shoulders burning. When I came back down, she was holding the box of screws ready for me without a word. The space between us started to feel less like a gap and more like a shared job site. By late afternoon, the storm settled into a constant heavy rain. The house groaned and adjusted to the wind. The plywood rattled. Somewhere in the ceiling, I heard that slow tick again. A drip near the chimney. I would deal with the roof next. For now, we had done something important. We had stopped being just a client and a contractor stuck in the same storm. We had become 2 people on the same side of a line, facing the same danger, building the same wall. And whoever was outside watching and waiting had no idea that the story inside the cabin had just changed. By the 2nd night, the storm stopped feeling like weather and started feeling like a person trying to get in. I spent the afternoon in the attic with my headlamp and a tube of roofing sealant. Rain tapped the boards in a slow, steady rhythm right where the chimney met the new decking. It was just a hairline gap, but it only takes one gap to ruin a ceiling. I pressed my hand to the cold wood and felt the faint beat of water. Then I jammed the sealant into the seam and smoothed it with my thumb until the next drop hesitated and stopped. When I climbed back down, Elena was at the table with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and her notes spread out in neat stacks. Her hair was up in a messy knot. She had ink on the side of her hand. Her laptop sat closed beside her. "You sealed it?" she asked. "Roof will hold," I said. "At least better than I do." She looked up at me, really looked, and for a second her face softened. "You keep fixing things," she said. "That is the idea," I answered. I'd put a clean towel over the back of her chair anyway. She rolled her eyes, but pulled it tighter around her shoulders. By the time darkness settled again, the whole cabin felt different. The downstairs windows were boarded. The upstairs hallway had a chair wedged under the end window. The closet in the master bedroom had a screw through the frame, so it could not swing open without noise. The only open parts were the vents and the space under the house, and I could not reach those from inside. We ate pasta from the same pot, sitting on the pull-out couch in front of the fire. The power was still out, so the lantern cast a warm circle over us. Outside, the wind screamed at the walls. "You are pacing," she said after the third time I walked to the window and back. "I am thinking," I said. "About what?" she asked. "About getting a message out," I replied. "If the rain eases, I can try a fire on the stone ring by the porch. Maybe the sheriff or a ranger will see the smoke. Or a neighbor." "And him?" she asked quietly. "He will see it too." "He already knows we are here," I said. "The smoke just tells him I am not leaving you." Her eyes dropped to my hands, then lifted again. "Do it," she said, "but do it smart." We moved together without talking much. I built a small fire in the stone circle by the steps using scraped dry kindling from my truck and the driest logs I could find under the porch. She brought a metal mixing bowl and held it over the starter flame to keep the rain off just long enough for it to catch. When the wood finally took and a thin gray column started to rise, it felt like relief pushing out of my chest. Then the wind shifted hard. The smoke bent low and crawled along the ground instead of going up. It dragged under the eaves and wrapped around the cabin like fingers. Across the yard, beyond the sheets of rain, I saw it. A shape between the trees. Not a clear figure, just a darker patch in the dark, in the exact wrong place. Too still to be a branch, too patient to be an animal. Elena went quiet beside me. "You see that?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. The shape did not move. It did not wave or charge. It just watched. "Inside," I said. We stamped out the fire and kicked mud over the coals. Then we went back in and locked the door twice. I slid the deadbolt. She pushed the couch back against it without being asked. We stood there for a moment in the dim light, breathing hard. "I hate this," she said. "I hate feeling like a rabbit in a trap." "You are not a rabbit," I said. "You are the one who wrote the map." Her mouth twitched at that, but the worry stayed in her eyes. To keep her mind busy, I asked about the book, the one he was obsessed with. She told me the story in short pieces while we checked the last of the window latches and moved the lantern so it did not make us a clean shadow target. "The carpenter in my book," she said, resting her hand on the back of the couch. "He keeps everyone alive, but he dies at the end." I stopped and looked at her. "Change the ending," I said. "That is what started all of this," she replied. "The last draft, I let him live. I thought I was allowed to give someone a happy ending for once." "So you did," I said. "You do not owe that man outside anything." She let out a hard breath and came to lean on the counter while I checked the knife edges. "You know, I did a background check on you before I hired you, right?" she said. I froze for a second, then kept working. I figured. "I know about the bar fight," she said. "I know you broke a guy's jaw." "He would not let go of my sister's arm," I said, my voice going low. He had 3 inches and 50 pounds on her. I told him 3 times. He did not listen. And you waited for the cops, she said. You did not run. Still lost my bond, I said. Still lost work. That is why I took this job up here. No one else wanted the risk. You wanted cheap and available. She stepped closer, her hand brushing the back of my forearm where the compass tattoo sat. I hired you, she said slowly, because I saw you at the Miller place. You sanded their deck for 3 hours after dark because you said the stain would not take right if you left it rough. Her fingers rested lightly over the ink on my skin. You care about what holds people up, she added. And when you saw me that first day, you stood in front of the half-built railing without even thinking. You are always between people and the edge. The air between us got heavy, warm, charged. I turned my hand over and gently caught hers. Elena, I said, warning myself as much as her. Do not pull away again, she said softly. Not because of a record. Not because I am older than you. Not because of what the world thinks I should want. I started to lean in. That was when the glass broke. The sound came from the kitchen, sharp and wrong. Not the creak of wood or the shake of a window in the wind. A clear crack and the scatter of shards on tile. Stay down, I barked, pushing her behind the couch before the word even finished. I grabbed the hammer from the coffee table and ran. Cold wind shoved rain into the kitchen through a new jagged hole in the glass. One board of plywood had a brick-sized impact crater, splinters radiating out from the center. Someone had thrown a rock hard enough to punch through both. On the floor, surrounded by broken glass, lay a brick wrapped in a plastic bag. I picked it up. My hand shook once. Inside the bag was a Polaroid. It was us, me and Elena, in the king bed upstairs 2 nights ago, my arm under her head, her face tucked into my chest, our hands locked together on the sheet. The angle came from the closet, just inside the door, as if it had been open a crack while we slept. I tasted metal in my mouth. He had not just been under the house, he had been in the room. I went back to the living room with the brick in one hand and the hammer in the other. Elena was already on her feet, eyes wide. What was it? She asked. I held out the bag. She looked at the photo. For a second, all the color drained out of her face. Her knees shook. I put my hand on her elbow in case she dropped. Oh my God, she whispered. He was in the room. He was in my room while we were asleep. He is not getting back in, I said. We have to leave, she said, looking at the door like it was both a way out and a trap. Now. I do not care about the river. I do not care about the storm. I cannot stay here another second. The valley is flooded, I said. The woods are his ground. That is the story he wrote for us. We run and he hunts us. Quote. Tears filled her eyes, anger, not helplessness. So what do we do? She demanded. Before I could answer, a crackle came from the corner shelf. We both turned. A small, black walkie-talkie sat there, one I had not put there, one that had not been there this morning. It came to life with a hiss. Elena, a distorted voice sang through the static. Do not leave. The party is just starting. She let out a small sound and grabbed my arm. I crossed the room, picked up the radio, and smashed it against the stone of the fireplace until it broke apart. Plastic pieces skittered across the floor. He wants us to run, I said, my voice going flat. He wants us scared and lost. So we do not run, she said, breathing hard. I looked at her. Her hair was wild. Her cheeks were flushed. She was shaking, but she was not collapsing. She was standing there with her chin up in a cabin someone had turned into a haunted house, and she still wanted a plan. Okay, I said. We do not run. We fortify. We make this place a trap for him instead of for us. You really think we can do that? She asked. I built these walls, I said. I know where they are strong and where they are weak. She stepped closer. Her fingers grabbed the front of my shirt, not to cling, to hold me in place. I trust you, Kyle, she said. Tell me what to do. Get the biggest kitchen knife you own, I said. And every pot that can hold boiling water. Her mouth twisted into something that was almost a smile. Now we are talking like my books, she said. For the next hours, we turned the cabin into a real-life final act. I poured cooking oil on the floor just inside the back door where the boards dipped a little. If he came in that way, he would slip. I unscrewed light bulbs in the ceiling and scattered broken glass below the living room windows, hidden in the shadows. Bare feet or soft shoes would not like that. I drove 3 long screws through the closet door frame upstairs so the hinges could not swing. I stacked chairs under the hallway window and wedged a broom between the bathroom door and the opposite jamb, so it would slam loud if opened. Elena moved like a second set of hands I did not know I needed. She sharpened the knives until they could cut a tomato just by touching it. She filled pots with water and set them ready on the camp stove and the fireplace grate. "If he comes in," she said, fingers white around the handle, "I am not hiding." "You stay behind me," I said. "This is my house," she answered. "You are my contractor, not my shield." "You are my client," I said. "You are my responsibility." Her jaw softened at that. She looked at me for a long second, then nodded. "Fine," she said. "We do it your way, but if I see a shot, I take it." "Deal," I said. Night came again. The storm outside howled like something with teeth. Inside, the cabin was lit only by the fire, and the faint glow of the lantern turned low. We sat on the floor with our backs against the kitchen island, facing the front door. The hammer rested across my thighs. The big chef's knife sat in her hand. Our shoulders touched. "You still think you are taking the floor?" she asked, voice quiet but steady. "I am not thinking about sleep," I said. "I am thinking about his timing." The wind screamed. The house creaked. For a long time, nothing happened. Then the generator roared back to life all at once. Every light in the cabin snapped on, bright and harsh, throwing our bodies into clean shapes against the walls. Elena flinched. I squinted against the sudden glare. "He fixed it," she breathed. "He turned it on. He wants us blind," I said softly. "He wants to see us from the dark, while we cannot see out." I got to my feet. The first hit on the front door did not sound like a knock. It sounded like an axe. The sound of that axe hitting the door went straight through my bones. The first hit shook the hinges. The second split the frame. On the third, the bolt ripped from the jamb, and the heavy oak door flew inward, slamming against the wall. A man filled the doorway. He was huge under a dark rain slicker, hood up, face covered by a pale rubber mask that looked like an unfinished prop from one of her stories. Water sheeted off him and puddled on the floor. In his hands, the fire axe glittered under the lights. "Ending time?" he shouted, voice ragged from screaming at no one for too long. He stepped over the threshold. I moved without thinking. "Elena, upstairs," I barked, putting my body between her and the door. He swung the axe in a wild horizontal arc at chest height. If it caught me, it would cut me in half. I dropped my weight and ducked. The blade smashed into the coffee table, sending wood flying. Pain flared in my shoulder from the wind of the swing. I came up inside his reach and drove the hammer into his forearm. Bone met steel. He grunted, his grip loosening for a second, but he was strong. Stronger than me in raw power. He threw his weight forward and shoved me into the wall. My back hit the log so hard my lungs forgot how to work. Behind me, I heard Elena's bare feet pounding on the stairs. He turned toward the sound. "No," I rasped, grabbing for his slicker. I managed to hook my hand in the fabric and yank him back. We both went down. My ribs slammed into the floor. His knee dug into my hip. He drove his forearm across my throat, cutting off air. Up close, I could smell wet wool and metal and something sour under it. His eyes through the mask holes were wide and wild. Spit flew from his mouth while he hissed. "She changed it," he snarled. "You ruined it. She changed my ending." I clawed at his mask, fingers catching the edge. I ripped it off. He was just a man. Pale, trembling, eyes full of rage and something broken. That almost made me angrier. I reached for the hammer. It was just out of reach, handle touching my fingertips. His other hand went for the axe again. That was when the trap hit. His boot slid on the oil I had poured by the back of the room. He slipped sideways, weight shifting just enough that his arm came off my throat. Air rushed into my lungs in a painful flood. He grabbed at the wall to steady himself. His hand came down in the scattered glass under the window. He howled, jerking back. Palm cut. I pushed up, but he was still moving, still fast. He staggered toward the stairs, away from the broken glass, dragging the axe with him. "Elena!" I shouted. She was waiting at the top step, pot in her hands, water boiling so hard it shook the metal. She did not look scared. She looked furious. He lifted his head just in time to see her. He tried to lift the axe. Too slow. She threw the water. It hit his face and chest in a steaming sheet. He screamed, a raw, animal sound, dropping the axe to clutch at his skin. I lunged, kicking the axe under the couch. He swung at me blindly. I took a glancing hit to my side that lit up every nerve near my ribs, but I stayed on my feet. I drove my shoulder into his midsection and tackled him hard onto the entry rug. We hit the floor together. His breath rushed out. I rolled, pinned his arms with my knees, and pressed the hammer hard into his shoulder joint. "Stop," I growled. "It is over." He bucked once, twice. Then his strength went out like a light. "Zip ties," I gasped. Elena was there in an instant. She slid on the wet floor in her socks but caught herself on the console table. Her hands shook, but they were sure as she cinched the plastic around his wrists, then his ankles. He spat curses at both of us, still kicking. I moved the hammer to his throat, not pressing, just resting it there so he could feel the weight. "Look at me," I said. His eyes finally met mine. "If you move again," I said softly, "I swear to you, you are not getting back up." He stilled. For a second, there was only the roar of the storm, the sharp smell of scalded skin, and my own pulse pounding in my ears. Then Elena was in front of me. Her hands came up to my jaw, turning my face toward the light. Her eyes scanned for blood like she had done it 100 times. "Kale," she breathed. "Are you hurt?" "I am here," I said, voice rough. "You okay?" She nodded once, quick. Then her control cracked just enough that she leaned in and pressed her forehead to mine. "Do not ever tell me to stay upstairs again," she whispered. I let out a half laugh that hurt my ribs. "You threw boiling water at a guy with an axe," I said. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Her mouth trembled into a small smile. Then she kissed me. No hesitation, no testing the water. She just grabbed my shirt and pressed her lips to mine like she was claiming a space that had been hers all along. I kissed her back, one hand at her waist, holding her steady, the other still tight around the hammer. The world narrowed to the heat of her mouth and the taste of fear finally breaking. When we pulled apart, both breathing hard, she whispered against my cheek, "Do not stop." I did not. We dragged him to the pantry together and tied him to the heavy shelf frame for good measure. I sat in front of the door with the axe handle across my knees until the first weak light of morning slipped around the edges of the boarded windows. The storm eased, finally moving off the ridge. The wind dropped from a scream to a tired moan. The rain softened to a steady tap. We built another fire on the porch, this time in clear weather. The smoke went straight up into the cold blue sky. When the sheriff's truck finally appeared on the road below, lights flashing, I felt my whole body loosen at once. It almost took my knees out. They took him away in cuffs. He tried to twist the story even then, shouting about inspiration, about being owed. The deputies did not listen. Turns out he was already wanted in more than one county. Paramedics checked my ribs. The sheriff took our statements while standing on that same porch where I had nearly left the night it all started. When it was over, my truck was jump-started, the road was passable, and real life came rushing back in like cold air. That was when I started to back away. Standing in the doorway of that big timber cabin, Elena looked like herself again. Jeans, soft sweater, hair brushed, spine straight. The sheriff had told her the press would be interested. Her publisher had already called twice. She was Elena Russo, #1 thriller author. I was still the guy with calloused hands and a probation mark on his record. "Sheriff says you are a hero," she said, coming to stand by my truck. "Just did the job," I said. I kept my hands on the steering wheel so I would not reach for her. "I will send the invoice for the window and the door when it is done." Her eyes narrowed. "Do not do that," she said. Do what? I asked. Shut down and drive away, she said. You were ready to walk out during the storm. Now that the cameras are coming, you think you do not belong here. Elena, I said quietly, you go back to book tours and interviews. I go back to sanding decks and eating gas station sandwiches. We live in different worlds. Her jaw clenched. Is that what you think this was? She asked. A storm story and nothing else? Quote. I could not look directly at her when I said it. If I did, I would break. I think I do not want to watch you feel stuck with the carpenter who sleeps on a mattress in a trailer, I said. You deserve someone without a file in the sheriff's office. She stared at me like she wanted to argue. Instead, she took a step back. Coward, she said softly, but there was hurt under it. I put the truck in gear and pulled away before I changed my mind. 2 weeks later, I was up on a scaffold in town, nailing joist hangers, when my phone would not stop buzzing. Marcus yelled up that if I did not answer it, he would throw it into the foundation. I climbed down, wiped the sawdust off my hands, and checked the screen. It was a link to a live stream. Turn it on, Marcus said from the ground. Just trust me. The video showed a long table, a hotel ballroom, microphones. Elena sat in the middle in a simple black dress. No armor, no blazer, just her. A reporter's voice came through the phone speaker. Ms. Russo, the dedication page of your new book is very personal. It says, to Kale, who kept the door and changed my ending. Who is he? She looked straight at the cameras. He is the contractor who came up the mountain to fix my roof, she said. He is the man who sat with his back to my bedroom door so I could sleep. He reheated my coffee every time I forgot it. He took the floor without arguing. He put a line down the bed and called it a DMZ so I would feel safe. She swallowed once, then went on. He broke a man's jaw once for hurting his sister, she said. He stayed for the police instead of running. His file calls that a crime. I call it proof that he stands in front of people who need him. The room was silent. She took a breath. I let the only honest thing in my life drive away, she said. So I will say this once in public. She leaned toward the mic. Kale, if you are watching, the roof still leaks and I cannot sleep in that big bed alone. Come home. Reporters started shouting questions. She sat back, eyes bright and unashamed. Marcus whistled low. You still think you are too small for that? He asked. I did not finish the workday. I drove. Up the mountain, past the bridge now dry. Around the fallen tree that had been cut into neat rounds. The sky was clear. The cabin sat solid on the ridge, smoke curling from the chimney. Her car was in the drive. I had not even made a fist to knock when the front door opened. She stood there in a black tank top and jeans, hair loose around her shoulders. In her arms she held a pillow and a folded gray blanket pressed to her chest. We stared at each other for a long heartbeat. You came, she said, voice softer than I had ever heard it. You put me on national television, I said. My voice sounded rough, but I was smiling before I could stop it. She stepped forward and shoved the pillow into my chest. Take it, she said. You are not sleeping on the floor ever again. I wrapped my arms around the blanket and pillow like they were the heaviest tools I had ever carried. We ended up on the porch steps, side by side, just like the morning the sheriff had found us. Only this time there was no caution tape. Just quiet trees and the sound of the river far below. You told them the roof leaks, I said. I sealed that chimney the first night. It has not dripped once. She smiled without looking at me. I was not talking about shingles, she said. I turned my head. She met my eyes without flinching. I am in love with you, Kyle, she said. I am tired of pretending I can sleep without your back against my door. I am still broke, I warned. Still younger. Still a guy with a record. Good, she said, standing and holding out her hand to me. You will have more energy to keep up on this mountain. Quote. I took her hand and stood. When she leaned in, I met her halfway. The kiss this time was not desperate. It was steady, deep, and sure. My hands slid to her waist. Hers curled into my shirt and stayed there. When we finally pulled back, I rested my forehead against hers. I am not taking the floor this time, I said. She laughed. bright and real, and tugged me toward the door. "I would not let you if you tried," she said. The cabin door closed behind us, the lock sliding into place with a solid sound. Outside, the mountain was quiet. Inside, for the first time, the bed was just a bed, and not a line drawn in fear. And the man who always took the floor finally let himself stay.